Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to be making a patch from scratch using only built-in Ableton plugins, and we're going to be using the Analog synthesizer, which is a subtractive software synth. And I'm going to be aiming to create sort of like a warm, horn, lo-fi, brassy type of patch. So let's get into it. All right, so I've dragged in an instance of Analog, just the basic kind of initialized preset, which sounds like this. So we're going for something brassy. So the first thing I want to tackle are the shapes of the envelopes. So we want a slightly slow attack and then kind of a diminishing decay down to a roughly low sustain and then a bit of release as well. So there's two envelopes we can play with. One is in the amplifier here and then one is for the filter. So let's play with the amp first since our filter is all the way open. So the default shape they give you is something like this, but I want a slightly slower attack. We can always come back and tweak this later. I'm just gonna get a ballpark for now. I'm gonna lower my sustain, because I just want a little bit of that sustained sound, but not too much. And then the release seems fine. So I'm gonna turn off oscillator 2 for now so we can focus on just one oscillator. So we have a saw by default. All right, next let's play with the filter. So obviously we want a low pass filter. So I'm gonna pick a 24 dB one, but you can experiment with the other ones. 24 dB gives you a steeper slope, so it's more like the Moog style filter. You get a more abrupt cutoff and a warmer sound overall. So I'm just gonna lower the cutoff frequency here with this knob. So this sounds pretty good. Again, I'm just playing it by ear. And then we want a little bit of contribution of the envelope. So by default, the envelope amount is set here to 4. So we're already getting a bit of cutoff frequency modulation with this envelope here. So again, I'm gonna mimic the shape I had here. I want the filter to open with a slightly slower attack. So I'm gonna lower that here and bring this down. And then we can increase the amount so we get a more drastic effect. Then it's just a matter of tweaking the cutoff frequency of the filter and the envelope amount. So I find my sustain or my release is a little too... It cuts off a little too fast. So let me tweak that for both the amp and the filter. Always remember to tweak the amp envelope because obviously if your amplifier is shut off, it doesn't matter where your filter is set because the volume will be cut off. And I always find it helps while I'm making a patch to play something a little more melodic. It's fine to just kind of play one note to get the timbre, but sometimes to get the feel for how the release plays, you want to experiment with some melodies. So as I'm playing this, I feel like my release is still a little short. And every synthesizer is different. Every synthesizer is kind of calibrated a little bit differently in terms of the ADSR envelope. So you always have to kind of feel it by ear a little bit. This is fine. Again, I'm not trying to emulate a brass like an actual trumpet or something, just more of like a synthesizer-y, brassy patch. So I like this so far. Another thing that we can do is increase the resonance a little bit to make it a little more interesting to listen to. We don't want to do it too much because we don't want like a squelchy type of sound which will take away from the warmth. But just a little bit to accentuate the cutoff frequency point. I feel like my attack is a little too fast. Yeah, that sounds a little more brassy. Again, I'm going to reduce the envelope a little bit, the contribution. I feel like I want to hear a little more of the sound while I'm holding down, so I'm going to increase the sustain a little bit. And again, this is a matter of playing with both the filter and the amp envelopes. Because when you have a low-pass filter and you're closing the filter, you're effectively changing the volume of the sound because you're cutting off most of the overtones. So you have to make sure that both the amp and the filter are always balanced. The other thing I really like to incorporate in my patches is a little bit of noise, especially when I'm going for something lo-fi. So let's turn that on. Obviously this is like full force noise off the bat, so we want to reduce that a little bit. And we can change the color of the noise. Again, this has a lot to do with playing the patch over and over again to see what it feels like. So you don't want the noise to be in your face. Like, you want to be able to tell that there's noise, but if you remove the noise and you can tell that it's not there, then that's a good sign that there's kind of a nice subtle like warmth added. This is all a matter of personal preference. I like kind of soft, warm, noisy patches. All right, that's good enough for noise. So another thing we can do is I can engage my LFO here, which is off. So I'm just gonna push this button here. And then I can add a very subtle amount of LFO modulation to the pitch of oscillator 1. Very, very subtle, maybe like 0.05. So you can hear that. The patch is kind of like a warm Boards of Canada type of. Again, we're looking for something very subtle, but when you play the patch out, it contributes to that like nostalgic type of vibe. All right, I still feel like there's something as I'm performing, there's something that keeps me from feeling the patch fully. I think I need a little more sustain and release, and maybe a slightly less exaggerated filter. Again, it's just a matter of once you find the ballpark, then it's lots of tiny little tweaks, playing, tweaking, until it feels right. So I'm really liking the low end. It's got that nice tuba, like warm tuba. So the final thing we can engage is oscillator 2. And we can use this just to accentuate the sound a little bit. I don't want like a full 2 oscillator sound because it's gonna be too fat. So you can see it's very like in your face. So maybe I'm gonna create a sine wave, shift it an octave higher. So you can see it's just adding a little bit to the timbre by adding kind of harmonics higher up. And I'm gonna reduce the volume. Maybe detune it a little bit. Yeah, I like that. It just beefs it up just a slightly little bit. And of course we can go back to our LFO pitch modulation and increase that to see if we can. So if I make it too much, you can hear what it sounds like. It starts to sound actually out of tune, which is not what we want. So something around 0.05 is subtle enough, but there. And then finally I can engage vibrato here in the final section, and then I can go here and set the amount of mod wheel to vibrato. So we can bring in vibrato with the mod wheel. This is mainly just for performance. So I'm gonna pull up a saturator here, which will give us a tiny bit of kind of overdrive and distortion. So here I need to make sure that my levels are balanced. So I'm not looking to increase the volume, I'm just adding a little bit of saturation and clipping. Another way you can do this is in the filter of the synthesizer, you can choose the drive amount here, so I can pick something a little more exaggerated. And then I'm gonna add a reverb. Normally I use the Valhalla reverbs, but for this tutorial I'm gonna stick to all stock plugins so that you guys can follow along regardless of what plugins you have. So this is the stock Ableton reverb. I'm just gonna increase the decay, maybe lower the size. And that's pretty much it. I think I'm gonna leave it like this. Maybe, now that I'm playing it maybe I do want a little more sustain. And a little less drive. This is getting a little too crazy here. Actually, I think it's the filter drive that's too much. Let's switch it back. Maybe increase the resonance. Let me see if I add a bit more filter. So you can easily turn it into a pad just by dragging the attack time down. Reduce the drive. Actually, I'm gonna turn off the saturator. All right, so I'm gonna leave it there. Again, if you're happy with the patch, again, in this case, I'm not using the saturator after all, but you can just select everything and press Command G to group it. And then you can save your group to your presets. And then you can think of your preset as being a combination of the synth and the effects and kind of repurpose that and use it over and over again. So don't be afraid to add effects as part of your kind of patch creation. All right, hopefully that was interesting. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this, and I'll catch you guys in the next.